In 1996, Nintendo released the Nintendo 64. This was the same year Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble came out. The latter represented the past, the former, the future. With the 5th generation came the leap to 3D graphics. With that leap came the need to fundamentally reinvent how video games worked. There's a lot to say regarding how successful Nintendo's strategies were in the latter half of the 90s. I was 10 when the console came out, so some of my fondest memories are with the Nintendo 64. Plenty other players have less rose-tinted glasses. Still, you can't deny that they brought their franchises forward a dimension with great success, in ways that are still being emulated today. Mario did it, Zelda did it, and Donkey Kong, well, that's a little more complicated. Welcome back to Donkey Kong Dissection. This is a difficult video for me to make. The previous 3 installments of Donkey Kong Dissection were candidly critical when necessary, but were largely celebrations of the 3 Donkey Kong Country games. Donkey Kong 64 is a game I have struggled to understand for 25 years. I want to get one thing clear right out of the gate. I am not here to mindlessly bash it, and I have far more to say than just the tired mantra of, "There are too many things to collect in this game." I hope it becomes clear over the course of this essay that I want very much to love Donkey Kong 64. But I don't. I'll be sharing my personal journey with this game, and I hope, by the end, you'll understand how I do feel about it. Let's start at the beginning. Donkey Kong 64 is a game that haunts me. It fascinates me and torments me. It was one of the Nintendo 64's biggest games, the follow-up to one of the most successful trilogies of the Super Nintendo. I begged for it for Christmas of 1999. I was thrilled that it came bundled with the expansion pack, that whopping 4 MB RAM upgrade. Not that I knew what that meant, but it's better now. Across the ages of 13 and 14, I devoted hours upon hours to playing it. I invested myself in this game, trying to complete every single thing in it. I convinced myself that I loved it, that I was having just as great a time as I did with all of my other N64 favorites. But then something happened. After several months of pushing through, I finally reached the end boss. I got stuck at Diddy's section, and then I put it down. I put it down for good. Even though there was but one remaining obstacle between me and victory, I just didn't have it in me anymore. It wasn't worth spending any more time with that horrid jetpack. I think I lent the game to a friend who finished it for me. I didn't care. I never finished it. I never saw the ending, despite having a complete 101% file. I shoved it into my Nintendo 64 game case and focused on games I did love. I'd play the Donkey Kong Country trilogy at least once a year. Even today, nearly 30 years later, I am constantly popping in Super Mario 64 or the 2 N64 Zeldas for another round, and they hold up just as well as they did when I was a kid. But Donkey Kong 64? Well, it would be 16 years before I decided to give it another shot. But that's enough about me for right now. Let's talk about the game. Rare had been busy during the Nintendo 64 era. In fact, its star had risen higher than ever. Amid a lot of third-party developers jumping ship, Rare filled a gap Nintendo desperately needed filling. And they delivered with bona fide hits like GoldenEye 007, Diddy Kong Racing, and Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie in particular was Rare's answer to Super Mario 64, the Nintendo 64's revolutionary launch title, the game that laid the roadmap for how 2D platformers could make the leap into 3D. And their 3D follow-up to Donkey Kong Country would likewise be an evolution of both of those games. This is usually the part of the video where I talk about the story. Rare is nothing if not good at spinning a charming yarn, even if a platformer doesn't really need one. But I don't have all that much to say about the story of Donkey Kong 64. That's not because I hate it, it's because we've already kind of been here. Because this was a generation where games were being wholly reinvented, it's probably not a surprise that Rare took Donkey Kong back to basics for this outing. No, not those basics, but the basics they had conceived of in 1994 for the first Donkey Kong Country. See, each successive game had seen the premise drift further and further from that initial concept. There were different locations, different enemies, and Donkey Kong himself had been pushed into the background in favor of other characters. Well, no more. Donkey Kong 64 would be a fresh start. This game returns to Donkey Kong Island, or Kong Isle as the manual now says. Enemies like Zingers and Naughties are back. K. Rool dumps all the silly disguises and returns to being a simple king. A simple king who steals DK's banana horde, just like in the first game. Rare didn't even want any Kongs who weren't in the first game. Donkey and Diddy are in, Dixie and Kitty are out. In fact, there's only one Kong from the sequels who does return, Wrinkly, and she's dead! Clearly, Candy Kong got her revenge for Wrinkly replacing her. It is a disappointment to me because I loved seeing how the trilogy progressed and changed, but I get it. It had drifted quite a bit. And of course, getting to see the old stuff in 3D was a whole new experience, so it's not as if this really feels old hat. There are a few updates to the ideas though, mostly made to facilitate the new gameplay. K. Rool has not only stolen the Horde, but he also stands poised to wipe the island off the face of the earth with his Blast-O-Matic cannon. That's a new twist. In another twist, K. Rool kidnaps every Kong who isn't DK. But not in the sense of a game-spawning kidnapping. The other Kongs are early unlockables. This is more like putting Diddy in a barrel in the first game, so I guess this is less of a twist than I thought. It's still just going back to the first game. However, 3 new playable Kongs are introduced to join DK and Diddy, expanding the playable roster from 2 to 5. Lanky is the resident wacky guy with stretchy arms and an inflatable body. That's pretty cool. Chunky is really big and beefy. Tiny can float with her ponytail and... Okay, these are just obvious and unnecessary replacements for Kitty and Dixie, which seems like kind of a slap in the face. If you want those character types, why not just use those characters? Tiny and Chunky are even said to be siblings of Dixie and Kitty. Ah well, whatever, they're fine. If I have any issue at all, it's that these new Kongs don't really fit into what little story there is. Who are they? I mean, look at the previous 3 games. Hero and Trainee, Boyfriend and Girlfriend, Baby and Babysitter. The trilogy establishes clear dynamics with its leads. Here, the only thing we learn about the new characters is their relationship to characters who aren't even in this game. So while I don't necessarily agree with all of Cranky's instruction manual barbs, I can't help but concur that this story is a bit worse than its predecessors. There's not nearly as much care put into it. Cranky's even forgotten that DK is supposed to be his grandson, not his son. But this is a platformer, and the story isn't all that important. This services the game perfectly fine. What else does Donkey Kong 64 have going for it? The Nintendo 64 saw the shift from 2D games populated by 2D sprites to 3D polygon worlds inhabited by 3D polygon characters. Donkey Kong 64 was not going to look like its Super Nintendo predecessors. That means that visually, Donkey Kong 64 is... a disappointment. And I really need to clarify what I mean by that. Donkey Kong 64 is a fantastic looking Nintendo 64 game. It's bright and colorful with dynamic lighting. Its character models are expressive and detailed. I mean, just compare DK64's Donkey Kong model to other contemporary DK models. These are hideous. This looks almost as good as the pre-rendered graphics. But that's the issue. In the Donkey Kong Country games, the character models are as good as the pre-rendered graphics. They are the pre-rendered graphics. Unfortunately, Rare kinda shot itself in the foot here. Donkey Kong Country cheated by using more advanced computers to make their graphics, something that works in a 2D platformer where those models can be compressed into little sprites with limited animations. But that couldn't work in the much more ambitious free-roaming 3D game Rare wanted to make this time around. While 2D sprites would continue to be used for objects requiring limited animation like item drops, most of the characters and objects had to be created in full 3D, and that meant relying on the Nintendo 64. Nintendo 64 graphics were never going to look as good as Donkey Kong Country. Ironically, since Wrinkly is a ghost, and therefore is represented as a translucent pre-rendered sprite, the dead character is the best looking character in the game. Rare had set the bar so high that it was impossible for them to meet it this time around. It was inevitable. It's not their fault. I think they made the right move. It doesn't make the game bad, and this is far more advanced than the DKC games could ever hope to be. But to someone who doesn't understand the reasoning behind it, like 13-year-old me, the DKC games just look more impressive. Polygons aside, visually this game doesn't impress me as much as other N64 games, even though I know it's better in a lot of ways. It's certainly more vibrant than, say, Ocarina of Time. Its environmental textures are gorgeously detailed. Its levels are expansive. But I always feel rather claustrophobic in them. Unlike Super Mario 64, where the skybox is open and vast, even if it has to use invisible walls to keep you within its confines, Donkey Kong 64 is surrounded by visibility-limiting walls and tiled tree panoramas. There are so many dark corridors separating areas of the levels. I know that must be because the massive stages can't be loaded all at once, but it just starts to weigh on me after a while. Jungle Japes is full of dark caves, Angry Aztec is full of dark caves, Frantic Factory is nothing but dark hallways, Gloomy Galleon is full of gloomy caves, Crystal Caves, as the name suggests, takes place entirely in a dark cave. Fungi Forest is really the only level that doesn't suffer from this, and even it forces you to spend much of your time running around at night. While the levels themselves are literally dark, the tone, strangely enough, suffers from the opposite problem. Remember how I've always complimented the Donkey Kong Country games for striking a great balance? Always being aware that they're cartoony games about talking animals, while styling themselves as serious and mature? This game doesn't do that. I have to give it oodles of credit. Like I said, the character models are great. They're lively and animated. Rare went out of its way to create cutscenes that show off just how expressive they could make these low-poly character models. K. Rool gets to twirl his metaphorical mustache in between every level, the Kong's individual personalities shine through in the character select menu, bosses are huge and complex. But as a result, everything is loud, everything is goofy, everything is slapstick, everybody burps. It goes way overboard. There's almost no deviation in tone. A lot of it is charming in isolation. For example, staging the final battle as a boxing match, complete with color commentary and cheating refs, is brilliant. It's equal parts zany, tense, and bombastic, perfect for a final battle and also unique from any other Donkey Kong final fight. But the tone always stays right here. There's never any space for melancholy or dread. But of course, a lot of what provides that atmosphere in the old games is the music, be it the compositions of David Wise or Evelyn Novakovic. Neither of them returns for this game. Replacing them is Grant Kirkhope. And he's great! Let me get this out of the way right now. I love the DK rap. One of my friends uses it as her ringtone for me. To this day, I'm not sure if it's meant to be a compliment or an insult. I don't understand why it's so hated and ridiculed. It is the perfect opening for this game, the perfect way to set the stage for what's to come. It's also what does the heaviest lifting in establishing the characters. I will hear no slander against the DK rap. There is nothing wrong with being openly cheesy and silly and cute. But again, this is the tone for the whole game. And that is reflected in the compositions. They're catchy, for sure. I can hum them all. I'm finding myself whistling tracks while writing this script. But I can't say I've ever sought them out just to listen to them, and nothing really grabs at my emotions the way Stickerbush Symphony or Forest Interlude do. They function. What drives me crazy though, is that nearly every piece seems to have to remind me that I'm playing a game about cartoon monkeys. They all have some bouncy, jaunty part that just screams cartoon music. Actually, my favorite track in this game is Spooky, the name of the piece used for Creepy Castle. That actually trusts the audience to bask in the atmosphere, surrounded by morose piano and gothic organs. But even it eventually leads into an upbeat, silly section, and I really wish it didn't. Just let me have this one piece of genuinely sad music, Donkey Kong 64! You know what? Crystal Caves actually has really good music too. Soft and beautiful. The only problem with it is that every 30 seconds it's interrupted by a cave-in. Nope, sorry, if we go more than 30 seconds without big action-y music, the little kids are gonna get bored. Hope you like being pelted by rocks. Hope you didn't spend a lot of time getting onto that tiny platform. I hate Crystal Caves. So that's enough about the story and characters and visual design. Let's get to the actual gameplay. Like I said, a lot of the design choices are made to accommodate the 3D gameplay. Series like Zelda made a fairly seamless shift into the third dimension. Zelda was always a free-roaming series. Adapting it to 3D simply meant bringing the camera down behind Link. The basics are largely unchanged. But Mario and Donkey Kong games had been about running in one direction down flat corridors. They were sprints through linear obstacle courses, a style that is wholly incompatible with an open three-dimensional world. Fortunately for Donkey Kong, however, Mario had already set the template 3 years earlier.
It's me, Mario!
Super Mario 64 leaned into the new opportunities afforded by the technology and adapted the game to take advantage of them. Mario was more agile than ever. Not only could he run in every direction, he could flip, triple jump, long jump, and ground pound. All moves that facilitated exploring every nook and cranny of the game world with as much freedom as possible. Super Mario 64 also realized that level design couldn't work the same way. Fully modeled 3D levels take up far more memory than sprite-based 2D obstacle courses. Super Mario World features 73 distinct levels. Super Mario 64 has 15 main courses, with a handful of smaller stages, all accessed from a central hub world. On paper, that sounds like a huge downgrade, but a player spends far more time in these courses than the few minutes they spend in each Super Mario World stage. Rather than simply trying to reach a singular goal, each stage in Super Mario 64 is broken down into multiple objectives, with each objective netting the player a Power Star. Accumulating Power Stars allows the player to access subsequent levels. It was a stroke of genius, allowing the essence of the Mario experience, the running and jumping dangers, to remain intact while presenting a wholly new way to do it. Super Mario 64 is one of my favorite games of all time. Rare's own Banjo-Kazooie follows that premise pretty closely. Gruntilda's lair serves as a hub world like Peach's castle had in Mario 64. Collecting jigsaw pieces opens up new levels. So of course, Donkey Kong 64 also uses that model, but even bigger and bolder. Donkey Kong Island serves as a hub. The Kongs can do flips and ground pounds, they can lob explosive orange grenades at enemies. Like in Banjo-Kazooie, they can learn tons of new moves throughout the game by drinking the potions of Mad Scientist Cranky. They can arm themselves with Candy's musical instruments and with Funky's collection of whimsical guns. Let me step back for a second. I know I was semi-complaining that this game serves as a soft reboot, that everything's gone back to the first game, but this doesn't, and maybe it should have. I can accept Cranky as a mad scientist, Wrinkly as a ghost, makes sense. But how does Funky go from laid-back surfer to mechanic to a Dr. Strangelove character? I don't mind the weapons, they're fun and silly. But this is not Funky Kong. Whoever he is, he needs therapy. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. Anyway, the characters collect golden bananas. Golden bananas are the power stars. They're used to open new levels. In Super Mario 64, there are 120 power stars, and a player has to collect at least 70 of them to finish the game. In Donkey Kong 64, there are 201 golden bananas, and a player has to collect at least 100 of them to finish the game. So yeah, Donkey Kong 64 follows in the footsteps of one of the most popular and influential games of its time, and adds its own additions and twists. So, great game, right? If what I just got done talking about was the extent of the game, maybe? Alright, I hope by now you believe me when I say that I have more to talk about in regard to this game than just the astonishing number of collectibles. Now that you do, well, let's go ahead and talk about the collectibles. Let's get them out of the way, rip the band-aid off, because the collectibles are a huge problem. See, the 201 golden bananas are just the tippiest tip of the iceberg. What else does the game want you to collect? Strap in, this is gonna take a while. In addition to the golden bananas, there are also regular bananas. Each stage has 500 regular bananas. They don't give you extra lives like in the old days. Instead, you have to collect them to feed a hippo to weigh down a pig that can open a door to the boss. You have to fight the boss to get a key. Not the same key the pig uses, it's a different key. You use the keys to open K. Lumsey's cage, so his loud, obnoxious celebrations can open the next level. Yeah, you have to open the next level and have enough golden bananas to enter. You collect coins to purchase new moves, new weapons, new ammo belts, more health. Collecting enough regular bananas, 75 per Kong per level, nets you a banana medal, and you need 15 of those to play at a chance for the rare coin. That, along with the Nintendo coin, arbitrarily open a required door near the end of the game, not that the game tells you that until you get there. But yeah, you collect bananas to collect medallions to collect the coin to open one door. Each stage has 5 Blastomatic blueprints to collect to give you more time in the final level. Each stage has a battle crown, won by surviving a battle stage, and you need to collect 4 of those to get through another door at the end of the game. Guess whether the game ever tells you that in advance. Each stage has 2 banana fairies, which are, mercifully, not required for anything other than completion and to unlock secrets and cheats. On top of that, you're constantly having to collect ammunition for your guns, charges for your instruments, crystal coconuts for your special moves. At any given moment, you are collecting hundreds upon hundreds of trinkets. I'll be honest, that doesn't sound fun to me, but it might sound fun to you. I've said in my previous Donkey Kong dissection videos that collecting things is not my cup of tea. I much prefer overcoming skill-based challenges. But that's just a difference in taste. I know lots of people who like scouring open worlds to collect all the thingies. For me though, hearing the term collectathon will send me running for the hills. It's all just a bunch of tedious chores. If all of that still sounds manageable, I haven't mentioned the most important part. This key difference turns this from a game that doesn't play to my tastes to a game that drives me absolutely bananas. Almost every single thing I just listed is subdivided to be collected by a specific Kong, and no Kong can touch another Kong's stuff. Each stage has 25 golden bananas, but each individual Kong can only collect 5 of them. Every stage has 500 regular bananas, but each individual Kong can only collect the 100 that correspond to their specific color. Every bonus barrel is for a specific Kong. Every boss is gated to a specific character, even though only 2 of them require character-specific skill sets. Every ammo switch and music pad only responds to its specific Kong's weapon, even though they all do the same thing. Coins are for specific characters, even though a lot of what you buy applies to all characters. Both animal buddies are only accessible to specific Kongs, and even then the animal can't collect that Kong's stuff. This game goes out of its way to be as segmented as possible, and even that might not be so bad except that the levels aren't designed with that in mind. There aren't Donkey or Diddy or Tiny specific sections, not for the most part. Sub-areas might be, but in general you'll follow a trail of one character's bananas into a section that has nothing to do with them. An area that's full of goodies for one character will have just one thing for some other character to collect. So, you know, I hope you remember every single thing you can't pick up so you can go back and get it later. And I mean that about remembering for later because this game, unlike the Donkey Kong Country games, does not allow you to switch Kongs on the fly. You can only switch Kongs at designated tag barrels that are in predetermined spots in the levels. I admit, exploring is not my favorite thing to do, but it becomes infinitely more frustrating when I go out of my way to explore, only to not be able to pick up 80% of what I find at any given time. Where's the fun in that? Scattering all of these character-specific collectibles almost at random throughout stages completely kills any and all enjoyment and ensures you're going to have to scour every stage from top to bottom 5 times. Even if you love exploring, this game punishes you for it. Imagine that! A collectathon where you can't collect things! And look, there's one more thing about the endless supply of color-coded tchotchkes that absolutely ruins it for me. It's not exactly fair to blame Rare for this, and if it was the only thing about this system that didn't work, I probably wouldn't even mention it because it would be a minor inconvenience at best. But for me personally, it takes something that is already infuriating and compounds it to make it almost literally painful. I've mentioned it in a few other videos, so some of you might have already guessed the problem. I'm colorblind. And you know what I have a hard time distinguishing? Tiny, low-resolution sprites in dark, murky environments. Especially when said sprites are rendered translucent when I don't have the correct character. In nearly 25 years of owning this game, I can safely say that Diddy's red collectibles are the only ones I can consistently recognize by sight. More often than not, I struggle to distinguish Donkey's yellow from Chunky's green. And I can never ever tell the difference between Tiny's purple and Lanky's blue. That's the final straw for me. I can pore over every inch of a level, which I don't enjoy. And I can come across collectibles I can't pick up, which I hate. But even on the rare occasion I actually remember where I need to go back to get them later, many times I'm going to fail that 50-50 shot at guessing which color I'm looking at and bring the wrong Kong anyway. All of that is why I trough and scoff at the insistence that there aren't too many collectibles, because you don't have to collect all of them or even most of them. After all, the only reward for doing so this time around is an extra cutscene after the credits. An extra cutscene that tries really hard to be funny and is really not funny. You can just collect the bare minimum and avoid most of the headaches, right? Well, given how unintuitively this is organized, not really. Not unless you already know what you're doing and what you need. First, let me say that I like fully completing games. If I enjoy a game, why would I want to play less of it? If a game is discouraging me from playing the majority of it, I feel that's a knock against the game. Would you recommend a book to somebody if you had to say, it's good if you skip half of it? So when I played this game at launch, I was very much in that mindset of having to do everything, and I suffered because of it. I put Donkey Kong 64 away until 2016. That was when I first had the idea of making a video like this. But not only would I need to capture gameplay footage, I didn't feel it was fair to criticize a game I hadn't played in over 15 years. And I wanted to be really fair to the game, so I decided to take that advice. Maybe on principle I didn't like the idea of skipping over huge chunks of the game, but if there was a way to make this game fun for me, I was willing and eager to find it. And it was better. At first. When I just had DK and Diddy, the collectibles were manageable. I was just running around and collecting whatever I could grab. But once I had all the Kongs and was expected to juggle all of their stuff, it quickly became overwhelming. The scattershot approach wasn't getting me the stuff I needed. There were too many dead ends, too many false hopes, too many translucent uncollectible collectibles. I was getting lost, frustrated, and bored. It was an even worse experience than meticulously collecting everything. I shut it off by the 4th level. And for several more years, I gave up on the idea of reviewing Donkey Kong games. Now, this whole rant of mine might be tickling a memory in your brain. I've been asserting that I don't like collectathon games, but didn't I say that Super Mario 64 is one of my favorite games of all time? What's that about? Well, quite simply, I don't believe that Super Mario 64 is a collectathon. It certainly inspired future collectathons like this and its own successor, Super Mario Odyssey, but it's not one itself. How can that be, you ask? It's all about collecting 120 Power Stars. Well, yes, there are 120 Power Stars to collect, but I'd argue that's not what the game is about. Everything Super Mario 64 does is an attempt to translate 2D Mario into a 3D environment. In those games, you start at a fixed point and run down a path, jumping over obstacles and dealing with enemies. When you reach the end, you encounter an object that signifies your completion of the goal. A card, goal tape, an orb, a flagpole. And reaching that objective allows you to continue on to future levels. Let's look at the very first star of Super Mario 64. You start at a fixed point and run down a path, jumping over obstacles and dealing with enemies. When you've reached the end, you fight a boss, and you are given a Power Star. Using that Power Star allows you to continue on to future levels. See what I'm getting at here? Power Stars are the flagpoles from Super Mario Bros. They're simply a means of keeping track of the fact that you have completed certain objectives. Now, there are certainly collectible objects in Super Mario 64. Each course has a 100 coin star, a Power Star given when you collect 100 coins. Even that, though, I'd argue is more of an endurance round, to test if you've mastered a course enough to scour it from top to bottom without dying, as the game resets your coin count if you don't do it in one go. It's a skill challenge. And it's not collect all 100 coins, it's collect any 100 coins. You can expedite your search any number of ways. No, the only true collectibles in Super Mario 64 are the 8 red coins in every course. 8! That's it! And even then, sometimes they're spread across a level, and sometimes they're localized to a very specific section of obstacle course to the point that there's no real finding to do. It's about survival. In fact, you can get through the entire game without ever having to do a single coin collection star if you don't want to. That's because, while collecting things is a major feature, it's not the focus. In Super Mario 64, the coins aren't the point. The Power Stars aren't the point. Platforming is the point. In Donkey Kong 64, that balance tips so far in the opposite direction. I wish I remembered who said this, but I once came across a post on a forum where someone had said that Donkey Kong 64 is the result of someone looking at Super Mario Bros. And saying, "This is a game about flagpoles. That's what people want, more flagpoles. Let's just throw in lots and lots of flagpoles. Let's make color-coded flagpoles. Let's make flagpoles that are required to get other flagpoles. The kids will love it." And they certainly weren't wrong, not entirely. A lot of people do love this game. They love Banjo-Kazooie. They love Super Mario Odyssey. I'm glad they do. And if you're one of them, even if you agree with me that Rare somewhat lost the plot when trying to emulate Super Mario 64, you don't see that as a problem. It's a happy accident, a wonderful discovery of a beloved gameplay style. I can't argue with that. All I can say is, it doesn't do it for me. The collecting smothers this game, to the point that it's the only thing most people remember. Okay, I promise that I'm done complaining about the collectibles now, so let's jump ahead to 2020. I'd made YouTube my full-time job and committed to making Donkey Kong Dissection a series. I knew I had but a few years to finally get my act together in regards to Donkey Kong 64. I had tried meeting the game on its own turf, I had tried to adjust my expectations, I had tried to minimize the grief I would go through by completing less, but this game just doesn't work that way. After years of giving up amid boredom and headaches, I finally realized that the only way I was going to reach the end of this game was the same way I got there when I was 13. With my nose buried in a walkthrough. I'm not proud of it. It's a practice I long ago gave up in favor of the joy of solving and discovering on my own. But I wasn't discovering any joy that way this time. I pulled up a walkthrough that told me literally everything, every step to take in exactly the right order with each Kong, so I would come across only their own stuff with a minimum of backtracking. From that moment on, I did not take a single step in a single direction without first vetting it. I didn't have to remember where anything was, I didn't have to guess at colors, I didn't have to constantly reach areas and worry about whether or not I could access them, or how many times I'd have to return to them or in what order. Basically, I gutted every tenet of free roaming exploration this game was supposed to be based around. And because of that, Donkey Kong 64 finally became playable. I finished the game for the first time. I've finished the game multiple times since then, all while I've been making the other Donkey Kong Dissection videos, all in preparation for this one. I wasn't exactly having a lot of fun, but at least I didn't constantly have a headache. I was still completing tedious chores, but at least I finally had a list of what the chores were. And honestly, the quicker pace of earning rewards was releasing enough dopamine in my brain to motivate me to continue playing. I realized it wasn't that I was having fun, I was addicted. With so many things to collect, I was constantly feeling that rush of progression, the illusion that I was accomplishing something, a feeling I only rarely experienced when I was playing without help. But since I no longer needed to focus on the finding, I could finally focus on the doing. That is to say, now that it wasn't being walled off from me due to endless chores, I could focus on the gameplay of Donkey Kong 64. Clearly, I'm overdue to say some nice things about this game again. I absolutely love the button mapping. No, really, I do mean that as a sincere, non-backhanded compliment. There are a lot of actions to take in this game, and Donkey Kong 64 makes great use of the N64 controller. Mario 64 codified using the C buttons as camera control. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time needed those buttons for items, so it instead uses the Z button as a quick camera center. Banjo-Kazooie and DK64 use both camera control buttons and a camera center button. But to activate more advanced moves, DK64 borrows from Banjo's really smart button combinations. I may have put this game away for years, but I never for a moment forgot the simple satisfaction of pressing Z and left C to pull out my gun. Instruments use Z and up C, and oranges use Z and right C. It's surprisingly intuitive. Unfortunately, that's the nicest thing I can say about the controls. The Donkey Kong Country games control so tightly. Why does everything here feel so loose, so imprecise, so clumsy, so slow? How is it that Super Mario 64 wrote the book on vibrant, responsive 3D platforming controls 3 years earlier, but this feels like such a regression? I can barely get these characters to do anything I want them to. Just grab the ledge. Just jump on the vine. Why do I have to perform backflips just to climb up some tiny boxes, or even ascend stairs? Why am I stuck on this stack of gold coins? Why can't I reach the tag barrel? Why does this blade of grass have collision? Why can't I just step onto this lip? Why can't I fly through these stupid rings? And I am no stranger to high-speed ring maneuvering on Nintendo 64. Why is this a platforming game where the characters suck at platforming? Put these monkeys in water and it gets even worse. There are 2 speeds, impossible to control fast, and hope you're not in a hurry slow. Heaven help you if you have to navigate underwater when the game sticks you with a fixed camera angle and tank controls. All I want to do is grab this golden banana. Why can't I get anywhere near it? The same controls that dictate my tilt angle are now also controlling my movement direction. Fantastic. There's a reason why tank controls typically don't have a Z-axis. And of course, the camera is just as awkward as in other 5th generation games. I think it's actually a little worse. I laud it for adding in a camera centering button, but unlike Zelda's, which quickly whips behind the character, this one just kinda meanders to you when it feels like it. You know, when it's not getting stuck on level geometry or blocked by other textures or just plain decides to stop following you. Camera? Hi, I'm over here. Could you please join us? I miss you. Let me be clear about what isn't the game's fault though. I recorded this footage from the Wii U Virtual Console so I could give you clearer video quality than Nintendo 64 composite cables. To be clear, I've played both releases to completion in preparation for this video. Yeah, I own the game twice because of Donkey Kong Dissection. The controls are bad regardless, but the Wii U borks this game so badly. Ah, that crisp, tight button combination of Z and left C to pull out your gun? Yeah, that C button is now an analog stick and it sucks. I can't tell you how many times I pulled out my instrument when I was trying to pull out my gun. The analog sticks in general are far more sensitive than their N64 counterparts, which makes aiming awful, it makes walking awful, it makes controlling anything awful. Remember those rings I talked about? I mean, I still don't like them. I've never liked Diddy's Rocket Barrel controls, but they're 100 times worse on Virtual Console. Just to test, after giving up on this over on Wii U, I popped in my N64 copy and beat it on the first try. I barely did, it was clumsy, but I succeeded. There's also this little nugget to keep in mind. Donkey Kong 64 knew it was pushing the limits of the N64. It knew it was going to generate lag. In certain situations, the game speeds itself up in order to compensate for that lag. It's a clever little trick. Unfortunately, on the far more powerful Wii U, there is no more lag, so the game just runs stupidly fast in certain places. I got stuck on one of the bonus games, Crazy Kong Clamor, because I just couldn't keep up with how fast it was. This is apparently a common problem because I found people complaining about it online, insisting the only way to beat it is to pause buffer the game. And yeah, it's still challenging on original hardware, but look how much slower it is. The same is true for Tiny's section of the final boss fight. Those nasty toes move so fast. Why are they so fast? Let me be absolutely clear. I do not blame the game for any of this. It is not Donkey Kong 64's fault that it couldn't predict how a more powerful console would emulate it years later. This is more of a warning. The Virtual Console takes a game that already doesn't control well and renders it practically unplayable. So the game doesn't control that well. But what about all those special moves? Donkey Kong 64 tries to vary its gameplay beyond just running and jumping. Some skills are innate abilities, but most of them come from Cranky's potions. Some can be used at any time, some can only be activated on character pads, some require character barrels and run on crystal coconuts. They really do run the gamut of usability. There are a handful of great abilities that tie into the specific characters and make them feel unique. For example, there's Tiny's Ponytail Twirl. It's far more limited than Dixie's, but functions the same way. It allows Tiny to reach platforms from a distance, it has a lot of utility, several challenges are built around it, it can be done at any time. It's a great skill for a platforming game to have. Lanky's Orang stand is another winner. It allows Lanky to walk on his hands to climb steep cliffs. It's easy and fun to use. It also seems perfectly in character for him. I complain about the rocket barrel boost. I hate how it controls. I hate how hard it is to aim. I really hate how touching any surface causes you to immediately lose it. But it's a creative skill. It fits Diddy's too cool for school personality. It's frequently useful, and it is a rare example of a skill that definitely should be gated behind crystal coconuts and specific barrel locations, rather than something you have access to all the time. Chunky's Primate Punch is another good example. Big guy has big punch. He can knock down gates and walls as well as put the hurt on enemies. I love it! Makes sense. There are others that are less inspired. Donkey Kong's Gorilla Grab means that he can pull levers. Wow, what a fun skill! How specific to DK that is! Sure hope the trigger for it isn't tiny and hard to line up. Diddy's Chimpy Charge is kinda fun, but all it is another excuse to add in yet another set of switches that can, for some arbitrary reason, only be activated by this skill. We have 5 different guns, but these switches can only be activated by Diddy's head. Diddy's Simian Spring is great, but I hate that it's limited to pads so that you almost never get to use it. Why not give him a spring jump all the time? If Tiny has an advanced horizontal jump, why can't Diddy have a superior vertical leap? Oh right, because Lanky's Baboon Balloon is also used for vertical movement, and we might run the risk of letting Diddy into one of Lanky's bonus barrels. The horror! Instead, the set piece tells you exactly what you have to do, and gives you no agency or variation in how you carry it out. Just stand on the pad in the spot we tell you to. How fun! And speaking of Baboon Balloon, I don't know if I'm missing something, but it seems to just want to deflate whenever it feels like it. And then there are the skills that just suck. Tiny can stand on a predetermined pad and monkey port to another predetermined pad. Okay, cool. It's the same as banana porting, a fast travel feature found in every level of the game, but now only Tiny can do it. Why is this a character-specific move? Did we run out of ideas? It's just another gate and another switch in a game that has no shortage of those. Speaking of switches, there are not 1, not 2, but 3 different variants on the same ground pound, or Simian Slam, that are exactly the same except for what color switch they activate. But the winner of the absolute worst ability in the game is Chunky's Gorilla Gone, a move that turns him invisible. I don't think it should have been that hard to come up with scenarios where turning invisible might be helpful, but they weren't even trying with this one. There was only one scenario in the entire game where Chunky's invisibility could actually be argued to contribute to the gameplay. Every other time it's required, it just causes random things to happen. Turn invisible to spawn a golden banana. Turn invisible to spawn ropes. Turn invisible to spawn a battle pad. Turn invisible to stop K. Rool from being invisible because I guess only one person can be invisible at a time. It's just another switch! They're not even trying to hide it at this point that this game is nothing but hitting switches. I guess that's why it's so transparent. So not every ability is a winner, but a decent chunk of them are at least fun and useful enough. Like with the collectibles, the huge number of playable characters drags this down. Just imagine if there were only 2 or 3 characters, and the abilities were pared down to the cream of the crop. Maybe if there weren't 5 playable characters, the game wouldn't have to stretch to come up with the same number of abilities for every single one of them. Why does Donkey Kong 64 control so badly? I have a theory. See, in games like this, I've mentioned there is a hub world, an introductory area that serves to store all the content, i.e. the actual levels. But DK64's levels oftentimes feel like hub worlds within the hub world. Yes, they are, to a large extent, just open spaces to put collectibles. But they're also open spaces to lead to various cutaways, isolated challenges, and mini-games. There's less of a focus on the levels as obstacle courses to be navigated than there is on them funneling players into what is the real meat and bananas of the game. Yeah, DK64 kinda forgot to be a platformer, so naturally the platforming movement isn't as high a priority as in Super Mario 64. Regardless, you can't say that the development team didn't go out of their way to create as much gameplay variety as possible. The sheer amount of things to do in this game is impressive, and if those mini-games are good, it should end up being a good game regardless, right? Well, they're a mixed bag. Honestly, most of them feel extremely random. Gotta shoot these flashing thingies in a time limit, gotta hit these targets with a cannonball, gotta jump through this ring multiple times, gotta ground pound these toy piano keys so the Kremlings can burp at you, gotta race this other character. At any given time you'll be racing in boats, racing in stock cars, racing down slides, racing on ice. Okay, there's a lot of racing. I have two disparate opinions of these races. They are the most dynamic, challenging, and interesting parts of the whole game. They're also frustrating and cheap. I think one of my core traumas as a child is hearing this stupid beetle laugh at me. Hope you don't want to see footage of me beating her. I've done it before, but I'm never wasting precious moments of my remaining life doing it again. And of course, it's not enough to win. You have to collect a certain number of coins too, because even in a race, you can't stop collecting things for 5 minutes. There are also several minecart tracks where you also have to collect a certain number of coins. These are fun and challenging, a great translation of one of DKC's core gameplay concepts into 3D. They're also very, very long, and there's nothing quite as demoralizing as being 1 coin short and having to do the entire course over again. But unlike the races, I get it here. With no way to die, there has to be a win condition, otherwise this is just a glorified cutscene. Collecting coins and holding onto them while avoiding obstacles is the challenge. Each level has a barrel cannon gauntlet to navigate like in the previous games. It's a nice effort, but it doesn't translate well to 3D. These were the real nail-biters in the first game, a high-speed twitch reflex frenzy. In DK64's rendition, they're not. You collect bananas or activate a switch while slowly drifting or rotating or bobbing. Even the music emphasizes how low stakes these feel. And I get it. They wanted a first-person perspective. Maintaining the challenge and speed from the old games would make this nauseating and nearly impossible to play. Ignoring comparisons, these segments are challenging and fun in their own way. They definitely aren't play-it-loud moments, but they're fine enough. Elements like these might infuriate me over how cheap and difficult they can be, but at least I actually feel like I'm playing a game where the challenge is in me getting better at performing specific actions. In other words, they're testing my skill, not testing my patience. Well, they might be testing a bit of that too. But there is no skill or thought in shooting a peanut emblazoned switch. Another common means of collecting golden bananas is through bonus barrels. Obviously, these Donkey Kong games have a long history with bonus barrels, and while the barrels look different this time around, it's more or less the same basic concept. Complete a task in a time limit and win the prize. The tasks are much more varied this time around though. Navigate a maze while defeating enemies, navigate a maze while avoiding enemies. Gee, this is a scenario where turning invisible might come in handy. Keep the claptraps fed so banana fairies can safely pass. Feed the snakes to keep the turtles spinning. Some are embarrassingly easy. I don't have to pay the slightest bit of attention to win Kremling Kosh. Some are the devil incarnate. Beaver Bother is a bonus game I can't imagine was ever play-tested. It is so incredibly broken. Even people who like this game hate Beaver Bother. That's another task I will not waste my precious mortality on. Minecart Mayhem returns to minecarts, but adds a fun strategic element of avoiding exploding carts. Batty Barrel Bandit is a slot machine. It's just a slot machine. Yeah, I can definitely see why this needed to be character specific. But then you have Speedy Swing Sortie, one variation of which is very much suited for tiny specific skills. It starts to feel like a game. Like most things in DK64, the focus is on quantity over quality, so the quality varies wildly. Some are great fun, others less so. All of these cutaways, be it the bonus barrels or the other random events, tend to be the most interesting parts of the game, which is good. But it is weird that the game can only get interesting when it stops being Donkey Kong 64 and decides to be other games entirely. When it was just the collectibles, I could at the very least concede that because of my own personal tastes and genetic deficiencies, Donkey Kong 64 was simply not a game for me. I wish it was, and I'd never criticize someone for enjoying this. It's just not a focus I find particularly engaging. But as soon as the tedium of finding was no longer obfuscating the gameplay, it really highlighted for me just how awful the gameplay can sometimes be, using its levels as a sub-hub world for mini-games. What I hear a lot is that while DK64 might pivot away from platforming, it's fine because a lot of people just like exploring the world it presents. If that's you, great! I'm not trying to take that away from you, but hear me out. After everything I said about exploring and collectibles, you might be surprised to hear this, but one of my all-time favorite video game series is The Legend of Zelda. And while this isn't the main reason I'm a fan, I do enjoy exploring their worlds. But that's because they give me worlds to explore. If I go to Lon Lon Ranch, there are people who live there. Those characters' jobs take them to other locations. The ranch exists for a specific purpose. There's an implied history to it. The whole thing suggests a living, breathing world that I can connect to. But if I go to, say, the mill in DK64's Fungi Forest, why is it here? What does it do? What is the purpose of these machines? Well, I'll tell you. You put 3 steel kegs on this conveyor belt so the grinder can destroy them because that's how you get a golden banana. That's not a world, it's a thinly veiled event flag. And that's the entire game. Nothing exists for any other purpose than as an artifice to house collectibles. And to be clear, all games are event flags papered over with context. But in this case, the game barely even tries to hide it. Now don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying that Donkey Kong needs to be Zelda. I've made it abundantly clear that I come to this series for the gameplay. The Donkey Kong Country games are charmingly overt in how video gamey they are. All I'm saying is, I can't even enjoy this on the basis of world building because no world is built. There's little here that's worth exploring. And if both the gameplay and the world fail to connect with me, what's left? Well, I'll tell you. I think this game really gets good, truly lives up to its potential, in its last few hours. Hideout Helm is the final level in the game, the moment where you infiltrate K. Rool's fortress. I mean, you technically infiltrated his fortress in Frantic Factory and Gloomy Galleon, but I guess those don't count. But here, the game strips away all the artifice of collecting crap. There's an intensity and urgency, as you're faced with a ticking clock counting down the minutes until the Blastomatic cannon wipes out the island. Suddenly, finally, the game becomes all about making the most of those specific character abilities to navigate dangerous terrain. Everybody has their part to play. The focus narrows to the actual premise of the game, the Kongs fighting back against the Kremlings. This feels like an actual Donkey Kong game, a real 3D platformer. Of course, immediately after that, you're pulled out of it to complete 10 random minigames in a row. Joy. But it's a tiny taste of what Donkey Kong 64 could have been. It picks back up again with the final boss battle, which is a tour de force of specific character abilities, putting your mastery of each character to the test, in challenges that are connected to the main game, rather than ones that pull you out of it. So it takes a while. Far too long. But the game finally gets good. I hope this has become apparent over the course of this video, but the main problem of Donkey Kong 64 isn't specifically the collectibles, or the Kongs, or the minigames. It's all of them. Donkey Kong 64's main problem is that it's bloated. It tries to be everything rather than polishing and refining a few good ideas. That was almost literally the mandate. According to the game's director, George Andreas, I'd always go back to Rare co-founder Tim Stamper and say, "Here's some," and he'd go, "No, more things." The staggering number of collectibles takes all the oxygen out of the room for good reason. But because of that, I never see anybody talk about how bloated and unfocused this game is in every other respect. There are too many characters that segment the gameplay, too many abilities that don't do anything worthwhile, too many cutaway minigames that distract from the main quest, and yes, hundreds of too many things to collect. Donkey Kong 64 is aesthetically a return to basics, but its gameplay is anything but. Gaming at the time was in flux, and not every reinvention worked. Even after 25 years, the franchise has never made a follow-up in the same style as Donkey Kong 64. Eventually, the gaming industry would remember that two-dimensional is not a dirty word, and that maybe that's where DK belongs. While we would see attempts at Donkey Kong revivals and spin-offs in the 2000s, it would be another decade before a new company would come along and give Donkey Kong Country a modern continuation that's also a true return to its roots. Donkey Kong 64 would prove to be an anomaly, but a very ambitious anomaly. It's a game that tried to be everything. Giving consumers the most bang for their buck is understandable, and certainly laudable. But if Donkey Kong 64 proves anything, it's that sometimes more is less. I did it! I said the title! Thanks so much for watching, and for your patience in regards to the arrival of this latest Donkey Kong Dissection installment. I hope it was worth the wait. I first started writing this script in January of 2021, before the first DKD even came out, and it went through 3 entirely separate drafts before I was satisfied with it. Unlike the other Donkey Kong Country games where I knew what I wanted to say from the very beginning, this has been a journey for me. I am very pleased to say that I understand this game now. I can beat it. I can derive some level of pleasure and satisfaction from it. Making this video, combing through my feelings enough to pull out something reasonably coherent, has been very cathartic to me. Of course, so is the realization that I now never have to play Donkey Kong 64 ever again! Every time I would play it though, I'd immediately have to follow it up with a palate cleanser. A reassurance that things do get better. I'm referring, of course, to Donkey Kong Country Returns, which we will be covering when Donkey Kong Dissection returns. Videos like this, especially long-form ones, are possible due to viewers like you, especially my patrons. So please consider contributing if you can. I'm sure if you like this, you'll like my ongoing Dragon Ball Dissection series. I have playlists on my channel of so many topics I've covered over the years. Please give them a shot. I'll see you next time!